May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio Podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our part to preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitation of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Mark Foote, F-O-O-T-E. Mark will tell us his unique way-seeking mind story and the very precise, intense study he has done, which you can read about at zenmudra.com and on Facebook at Zazen Notes. I've been in touch with Mark, 20 years or something. I mean, I think I know him because of Cuke.com in the early years, maybe Crooked Cucumber. But I was living in Sebastopol and he was living in Petaluma. So we got together at Coffee Cats. And I met him, and I've posted a number of things about him through the years. And followed him as well as I follow anybody. Well, not anybody, as well as I follow most people who I follow. Anyway, so look, after we've had our pause to meditate, let's give Mark a call. So when you hear the bell, if you're of such a mind, hit pause and meditate or whatever for as long as you wish. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause. And we'll be here to hit the bell to end the meditation or whatever. Give Mark Foote a call.
Hey, Dave.
Hi, Mark. How you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Okay. Yes, all is well here. Where are you located?
I'm in Lucerne, California, next to lovely Clear Lake.
No kidding. That's in Lake County?
Yes, Lake County.
Oh, huh.
And it's called Clear Lake because the skies are mostly clear here, not because the lake is clear.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
And is that true? Are the skies mostly clear?
They were. The Great Northern California fire outbreaks.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Kind of gave us some orange sunsets for a while. Particularly the one that, there was a fire in Lake County in, it must have been 2018 that ran along the hills just to the east of me. It ran on the other side of the hills up along my side of the lake. So that was pretty close.
Didn't you used to be like in Petaluma or somewhere like that?
I did. Yeah, I did. I lived in Petaluma, and I lived in Forestville, and I lived in Sonoma town, and I lived in Sebastopol.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
both sides of Petaluma.
Have you and I met? I can't remember.
We did. We did. We met at a coffee shop in Sebastopol.
Did we meet
And
each other? I mean,
yes, and
were we there to be with each other?
yes, we were.
I thought so. I needed reminding. Uh,
At the close of the talk, you introduced me to your son who came by.
Clay, my younger son.
Yes, Clay. In fact, I think your former wife came by too.
Elon. Yeah.
Yeah,
Ah,
something like that.
which coffee shop?
That's a good question. I've been trying to recall. It must have been Coffee Cats, which is no longer called Coffee Cats.
Oh, that was a great name.
Yeah,
Is it
uh,
still there in
yeah,
Sebastopol?
yeah. It's still there. There's still a coffee shop at that location. It's just, I guess, it changed ownership and they changed the name.
To what?
That's a good question.
Oh, all
I could
right.
look it
That's enough.
up.
That's enough of that. Well, that's interesting. Well, so, uh, how do you spend your time these days?
um, Mostly in front of the computer.
And what are you
Uh,
doing?
well, today I actually did some work for the people I work for, which is Beautiful Places, company called Beautiful Places, all slammed together in camel case, which means capital B and a capital P in the places, but it's all run together, Beautiful Places.
Wait a
And
minute.
what they
Capital
do,
B and P, beautiful places. Yeah. What
so it's
is
all,
it?
like
What
it's
is
all
it?
one word.
Oh,
They rent homes in the wine country primarily,
oh,
Napa and Sonoma.
oh.
So they'll rent places in Sonoma County and in the town of Sonoma for 3 nights, 4 nights, 5 nights, 2 nights. And they'll rent
Yeah.
houses in the Napa Valley, but those are 30-night minimum.
Uh,
Not
wow, wow. My sister rented. We've rented homes in. Even though I lived in there, we've rented homes there. For my mother's 90th, we rented one really nice. Oh, we had a giant family reunion, and my sister rented a place in Napa for her. Mm, I think her 70th birthday. So it wasn't. It was, and then her 80th birthday is going to be in September, and it's. I think she's not going to rent a home. They're just going to go have lunch somewhere. It's so expensive now. Uh,
right. Yeah, everything's expensive.
yeah. Well, that's interesting. Well, you and I,
Anyway,
yeah, you, yeah,
that was part of my day. And the other
yeah.
part was given to writing on albums. I get in conversations on the website, the Dow Bums, which is just a forum site with a lot of crazy people writing about religious and secular but spiritual topics.
Now, what's
So
the name of it again?
the name of it is the Dow Bums. So Dow,
Like DAO,
DAO, yeah, DAO.
the Dow Bums. That's cool.
They're crazy. So am I.
Yeah. And what are you writing about within the Dow Bums?
Oh, the things I usually write about.
Well, tell us about
Um,
the things you usually write about.
well, let's see. Today, one of the Dow Bums was confused about um, what it means to um, have a ceasing of action that's a contact of freedom. You know, there's a line from the Pali sermons where Gautama says, "What is the ceasing of action?" And he says, that would be the ceasing of action of speech, deed, and mind, such that there's a contact of freedom. So he starts out by saying, that what he means by action is determinate thought in speech, body, and mind, speech, body, and thought. And then he says, what's the ceasing of action? It's a ceasing by which you contact freedom in those three arenas. So, he does not say a cessation of determinate thought, which is what he defined action with, but only that there's a ceasing by which you contact freedom. So believe it or not, that's what I wrote about. I don't know that the guy I was corresponding to will understand, but it's definitely the heart of the matter for me. So
yeah,
there I was writing.
Well, that doesn't matter. All that matters is that you understand what you're writing.
Right. I mean, I'm writing for myself. I'm aware of that. And it helps. It helps, and it helps to keep it front of mind.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I am aware of that. At the same time, every now and then, somebody picks up on something. There's a guy, I have a Facebook page called Zazen Notes.
Zazen Notes, right.
Yeah, Zazen Notes. And all I put up there are links to my blog. So the latest one, which I sent you a link to, is called A Way of Living. And I got a comment on that one from a guy who said, enlightenment just happens, which is interesting. So he was claiming that it's kind of a everyday spontaneous occurrence, not a view held by many, but I had to agree with him in the sense that I think the cessation of determinate thought in inhalation and exhalation is an everyday occurrence, at least in falling asleep, other times as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the final attainment Gautama described as a cessation of a determinate thought in feeling and perceiving. And I think that similarly comes about through an internal well-being, an internal necessity. And so I think he's right. Enlightenment, the attainment associated with enlightenment may in fact happen spontaneously to all of us. The difference being that in Gautama's case, he came up with independent causation and the four truths, which is what really is associated with his enlightenment. So he had this attainment. He attained a state of concentration, and the insight that he had followed that attainment.
Hey, excuse me.
Yes.
What are you doing?
Yes.
What are you doing?
I'm walking on my chair. I have you on speakerphone. Is it not good?
Yeah, it's well, your rocking chair. I mean, it's not louder than your voice, so if you want to keep doing it, it's okay. But it's like having some sort of clatter.
I got percussion.
Yeah, it's a type of percussion, sort of soft percussion. It's not like striking.
Well, let me see if I can go side to side.
Anyway, the mics pick up, unless you have one like I've got, which is very expensive. Somebody bought me, but same one Joe Rogan uses. But actually, not that expensive when you think what Joe Rogan could afford. Anyway, they pick up background noise, of course.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, it sort of sounds like a sort of scraping.
Yep. Well, it's an old wooden chair.
Yeah. Yeah, it does have a feeling like a drummer, a little bit like with the brushes.
Maybe I was using it for that. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so that's the kind of thing I write about and think about. And especially lately, I think about dropping the weight onto the ligaments. And
well, explain what you mean by that.
Well, in Tai Chi, they're very big on relaxing and syncing. It's called sync. And my take is that I'm looking to find automatic movement, automatic activity, sort of like rocking on my chair unconsciously, making terrible creaking noises, but more like stuff that I'm conscious of. I'm looking to find a way to drop my weight and drop my mind such that the activity of the body in inhalation and exhalation is automatic. There is no strain involved there. It's all coming off one point. So I look for that. I look to recover that. And I find that it's a lesson every day in terms of, letting that activity, relaxing that activity and finding the stretch that goes along with it such that I'm not holding anything. If you want to drop body and mind, you got to drop body and mind, so to speak. But there's a whole learning curve. For me, there's a whole learning curve. Some people are more talented than others. I was listening to your podcast about how you can sit the lotus without a problem. I'm jealous.
Well, I wouldn't say without maybe I said, I sit. When I sit in the mornings here, I always sit in half lotus. I stopped sitting full lotus in around, probably around 1978 or something. I sat full lotus constantly, everything through sessions still there. But, I noticed people having knee problems and having operations and stuff that
Really?
were clearly caused by people religiously following the Suzuki Roshi's admonition, don't move. And which he would, some people would be having serious pain and problems. And his solution would be, well, just keep sitting. Very much like Japanese sports. Very bad advice, I think, if you don't want to have a knee operation or something. Japanese, I read a book about baseball. It's really good, called You Gotta Have Wa. Yeah, he said, a pitcher would be developing, an elbow problem, and the thing would just throw harder, throw more. And it's completely opposite of sports medicine elsewhere. As soon as I felt started feeling, a pain in my knee when I sat full lotus, I thought, okay, I'm not going to sit full lotus. And I, I backed off right away.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, because, you can't, it's idiot practice to do everything your teacher says without, you got to be responsible for yourself. People are always blaming teachers for all this stuff that they went along with. But anyway,
Coben was more generous about it. I mean,
yeah,
I remember hearing him say, take your time with the lotus.
Yeah.
So that's an admonition to learn to sit the lotus, which I took seriously for, 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
But really past 35 minutes, at my best, not so good past 35 minutes. And I can tell.
Yeah.
But even Coben, I mean, the last time I saw Coben, he was sitting a 1-week session, and I showed up for the last couple of days being a slacker. And he was sitting his third 1-week session in a row. And he confessed that now he'd never had pain in the lotus, but now he maybe had like crescent moon's worth of pain in his knees at the end of, 3 consecutive 7-day sessions. So I guess it happens to the best of us. And I've been sitting nothing but half lotus for the last 5 years, and Burmese some of the time.
Burmese, yeah. I in the Vipassana retreats, that's what there was only one Vipassana retreat leader here, and they're from Myanmar, except one from Indonesia, a woman, a renegade woman. But anyway, they recommended Burmese, which means just putting instead of putting say the top foot on your thigh, just put it in front of your other foot, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, if I'm, in a Vipassana retreat sitting all day, I would tend to sit Burmese, but I'd also sit like Taylor. And I'd bring, I didn't have the, new student enthusiasm that I'd had when I was younger. I would also bring one of these sitting benches, and I would use it for the lectures and for, let's say, one time in the afternoon, one time in the morning. Just made it easier.
I think you're being great guns, even so, Dave. I really do. And I sat 40 in the middle of the night a couple of nights ago. It's the first time I'd done that in a while. But now doing 25s and sloppy half lotus. The ankle is on the other calf, not up on the thigh. So nevertheless, it's good for me. I mean, I feel like things are coming around. Something's coming around. I'm happy with what's going on.
Yeah. Well, you're lucky, and I'm lucky because a lot of people can't do this. I mean, I when I'm working, all the places where I work, I can pull my legs up. I don't sit in chairs much, just a little for a variety. Everywhere I work, I basically work with my legs up in, an easy posture. Not in half lotus, not in Burmese, really, just with my legs up. I can sit like that pretty much all day, and I don't get any pain. And also, I want to say one thing about the pain. The pain that I quit sitting full lotus for was a different type of pain. I went, that's not good. Because, of course, I had pain when I sat, if I'd even one period, I'd start feeling pain after 30 minutes or something, but not that much. And sessions sometimes, of course, it would be just having to not grin and bear it. But I could tell those weren't dangerous types of pain. At some point, it gets to be dangerous. And my feeling there was some of these old-fashioned Japanese teachers with their no pain, no gain trip and grin and bear it. No, not grin and bear it. That they gave very bad advice in terms of whether you were, of knee health. But I don't know. Everybody's different on that. One thing that's interesting to me is Richard Baker came to the Zen Center. He could not get into a lotus posture. And it took him, he was one of those people that just took forever, and he finally got into it. But in his adult life now, I see him sitting, even now, I don't know about right now, but I was with him, a few years ago. I was a Jisha at Tassajara and in the city and at Green Gulch and stuff. He would sit at a desk with, like me. But he'd have a floor desk where he could. I always have places where I can put my feet down, to rest them and then pull them back up. He got to where he could sit, through sessions and sit working. I thought that was an unusual, what would you say? An unusual history of sitting, because a lot of times people that have a really hard time getting started continue to have a hard time. But there's all sorts of different stories about sitting and posture and all that.
I think there is a lot to be said for striking a point in the posture that makes the activity automatic. If you can, it's like finding your center of gravity, but it's a little more than that, because it requires presence of mind to continue in a place that makes the activity automatic. But I think for a lot of the Japanese teachers, they found their way to that early, and their experience was that they could do impossible things that way. And so when they would say things like, more zazen, I remember getting that advice. It's probably good for you if you can strike a balance and the activity in the posture and in the breath becomes automatic, to where you're keeping a presence with a point, at a point. And that's your concern. That's what it's about. For me, I can do that, but there are lessons in my anatomy. There are lessons in the stretch and activity that's involved. That, I had a nerd posture. I grew up with a nerd posture, head forward, carrying a briefcase full of books, full of my thoughts. I'm still full of my thoughts. Obviously. So easier for some than others, and especially I think in Japan, where some of that postural stuff, some of that, physical gesture is kind of baked into the culture in a way.
That's right. That's right. Well, a big difference, not only in Japan, but in Asia, in more primitive cultures, people grow up sitting on the floor. And that just makes all the difference in the world. I don't know if the sort of advice of, if you got pain in your legs, just keep sitting. Maybe it's not that big a maybe it's the right advice for somebody who grew up sitting on the floor. Shoto Harada Roshi, who I studied with in Okayama, Japan, he thought sitting on the floor and having the hara as the center of gravity was the basis of Japanese culture. And as they lose it, he says the whole culture will fall apart. And he just saw chaos in the streets as a result of not having hara as the center of not only your body, but the whole culture.
Yeah. I've lately, I've quite taken to a quote that Omori Sogen offers in his introduction to Zen training. He quotes, I think it's Hida Hiramitsu, who says that one should keep an equilibrium between the hara and the koshi. I didn't even know there was a word koshi.
Koshi's like your back, your lower back or something?
Right, behind the sacrum and the lower back, especially the sacrum, behind the pelvis.
Yeah, koshi kaeru is one way to say to sit.
Right. So what Hida advised was keep an equilibrium between the hara and the koshi. And he said you want to bring the center of gravity over the center of the triangle of the lower body, essentially. Now, what exactly he's saying there, not quite clear to me, but by bringing the balance slightly forward, I find that does somehow precipitate the activity, which if I can relax and calm the stretch that's going on, it's a good way to find a switch to a point where the activity becomes automatic.
Yeah.
I talk in my latest write about Feldenkrais's recipe, for side to side, forward and back and around in a circle with the upper body. And I say that the object of those exercises is to allow the weight to rest in the ligaments of the lower body, especially the ones between the sacrum and the pelvis. And the idea is, he says, if you bring the weight forward, bring the center of gravity forward, when you're sitting in a chair, the action of standing will be automatic. The legs will stand without any conscious effort. So I think Hida Hiramitsu is talking about the same thing. If you keep an equilibrium between the hara and the koshi and let the center of gravity come forward a bit, why there's a way there to discover the automatic activity in the movement of breath, a single point where there's automatic activity. So I'm excited about that in my practice, because it seems like there's crossover there in posture, and my posture is still bad, but I think what is being recommended there is a good way for me to find the correction that both makes the posture more effortless and syncs me with in my breathing, so to speak, which is really, when I sit, I'm looking for that. I'm not looking for enlightenment. I'm looking to sync my body and my breathing somehow. That is useful for me. That I think can change my life. That's a direction I can.
Yeah. Well, it's you're dealing with something that's real.
Exactly.
Well, at least it's apparently real. Seems to be real. You've got some proof of it.
It's real when I feel it.
Yeah.
And I know it when I feel it, and I know what it means for me. It takes me out of myself.
Yeah.
And that's that's an important part of it.
Yeah. Oh, one thing. Now, when I sit half lotus, I alternate right and left. I mean,
Yeah.
this morning I sat. Well, on Sundays, you know what I do on Sundays? Come to think of it, I sit like in a chair because I think
That's
there's all
what
these people doing that. I should do that. And Sundays, I don't, I don't have any particular amount of time. It's the only day I don't do yoga, and it's the only day I don't. Uh, I walk. I still walk.
There you
But
go.
I've got to walk. But right lotus is more natural, is easier,
Right.
and left lotus. See, I I swing back and forth, but I not only swing back and forth, I go as far as I can, like more like a yoga thing. And in
Yeah.
half lotus, uh, it wants to start off with me leaning to the side. I've got to, after a while, it's um, it straightens up, but at the
Yeah.
end, I can push further. Uh, which
Right.
side?
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And uh, uh, one thing that in terms of the hara, that and that being the center of gravity. Now, all in Zazen, all the teachers that I've known emphasized putting your focus on your hara. Suzuki Roshi would say the tummy, which was a little irritating to me because it goes back. My parents stopped using the word tummy at an appropriate time before I
Yeah.
started getting embarrassed. And I had friends whose parents and teachers that would keep using the word tummy. And of course, I associate it with being like a toddler. And so I had a negative feeling about the
Yeah.
word
Make it
tummy,
hard.
and I never got
Make
over
it
that
hard.
with Suzuki using the word tummy. There'd be something in me going, "Hey, that's a word for little tiny kids. I'm not a little kid anymore." But
Yeah.
anyway, he would say Tara and Tandon, which are the same thing. Uh,
Yeah. Well, you
and
know what I find important on that left side.
it,
One of the things I've been working on is trying to actually three points I try to keep in mind, and one of them is the tailbone. Another one is the lower abdominals, the abdominals in the area of the lower abdomen. And the last of them is, the breath that's moving in and out of my skull behind my nose, believe it or not. So there's somehow, if I try to bring forward a mindfulness of my spine at the tailbone, that's not really part of the spine, but at the tailbone, and then I look to relax the muscles in the lower abdomen. It's like sitting on the left side, oftentimes is about activity and stretch in that area. So putting my mind there is an introduction to especially relaxing the lower abdominals. The part about leaning to one side, I oftentimes sitting to the left after 10, 15 minutes or something, it's like I'm not thinking about tailbone and lower abdomen. I'm thinking about somewhere up underneath the ribs in the lower spine and the abdominals up there toward the upper part of the abdomen. So I'm looking for, relaxing activity that is in the abdominals and becoming aware of stretch in the ligaments as kind of the source of that activity. So I look to the ligaments as the source of the activity, then I can keep going on Whereas, but I can't find the ligaments without appropriate relaxation in the abdominals. So it's kind of a catch-22 that way. And all of it goes away. It all goes away if I can't return to the one point, the singular point. But I don't think it's helpful to emphasize the Tantien because
to emphasize what?
The Tantien, the tendon, that point below and behind the navel are to emphasize the mind and the hara, because I find it much more useful to think that my attention, my mind can fall anywhere in my body. And in fact, I need to keep the whole body open to the presence of mind. I have to have that going on, or I can't coordinate relaxing my abdominals and calming the stretch of ligaments.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of a rhythm there.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting. You have, I know of no one who has what would you say, has an approach like yours that is so you have a discipline. I
have to.
You have a unique discipline, and it's I've been getting stuff from you about it for decades, it's it's pretty impressive. Does it have a? Do you have any? What are your sources for this?
Well,
I mean, most people who Charlotte Selver was probably. Charlotte Selver was one of the founding teachers, founding in the the human potential movement, body awareness, sensory awareness. She was like the best known sensory awareness teacher. And I've taken classes with her, and she was German, and she and her husband Charles, who Norman Fisher is. They left their home to Norman. It's they were original landowners in go way back in Muir Beach. I guess Charles was or something. It's like way up on top. It's the highest place. It's really neat. Anyway, Charlotte had and she did workshops with Suzuki Roshi. She had a lineage, of where her teaching came from. And do you have a lineage?
No, not per se. What I have is some research in India on pigs, where they established that the ligaments between the sacrum and the pelvis, in particular the sacroiliac ligaments, the sacrum doesn't really have a joint with the pelvis. It's just held by ligaments between the wings of the pelvis. So they did some research on pigs in India in, 2015, 2019.
Uh-huh.
And, they established that the stretching those ligaments has an effect on the muscles, on the muscle activity in the lower back and around the glutes. And of course, I've been going for some time on the assumption that stretching the ligaments could precipitate activity in various muscle groups. But they're very careful when they talk about the effect of the stretch of ligaments on the muscle groups. And what they really are willing to extend is that the stretch of ligaments affects something called reciprocal innervation, which is like when you walk. Reciprocal innervation means that when the muscles on one side of the body are active, the nervous system works in such a way that the muscles on the other side of the body are inhibited so that you get a pace. So when they talk about the stretch of ligaments and when they talk about ligaments at the sacrum affecting the glutes and the lower back muscles, they're not willing to say that it precipitates activity, but they're willing to say that it has an effect.
Who is they?
Scientists. You know, you go looking at the research on activity out of the stretch of ligaments or action associated with the stretch of ligaments. And the research on the pigs in India is the biggest and most recent piece. But apart from that, there's some very interesting research that was done by a guy named Bartolink in the 50s. Bartolink was trying to figure out why the annuluses in the lower spine didn't just pop when an Olympic weightlifter picks up a huge weight, because they've done studies and at that point they recognized that the annuluses could not take that kind of pressure. So the assumption was something was going on with the abdominals. And what Bartolink did was put a rubber ball surgically into the abdomens of weightlifters and measure the pressure there. And
oh my God. That's
what
amazing.
he said was pressure in the fluid ball of the abdomen goes up in proportion to the weight that's lifted. Right? So the significance of this to him was that he did some electrical measurements as well and determined it was the abdominals, not the rectus, that were inducing the pressure in the abdominal cavity. And the assumption was that pressure in the abdominal cavity was supporting the annuluses of the lower spine. There's more research from some people in the 80s, from Farfan, Krakovetsky, and LeMay. And what they did was mathematical modeling. They didn't actually do physical experiments. But what they were studying the same thing, which is how can a weightlifter pick up that much weight? The pressure from the abdominals didn't seem to be enough. So what they did was a lot of mathematics, and they figured out that given the flattening of the lower back and pressure from the abdominals, pressure in the abdominal cavity, I should say, so fluid pressure pressing backward against the fascia, the thoracolumbar fascia behind the spine, that pressure can actually move the thoracolumbar fascia like a millimeter or something, a ridiculously small amount, backward away from the spine, and that acts like a suspension bridge to pass the stress over the annuluses of the spine. So Farfan also made note that there's one place in the body where muscles can have an effect by a push, not a pull. Muscles contract, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, he said the muscles behind the sacrum are enclosed on three sides by bone. When they contract, the mass of the muscles there increases. The bulk of the muscles increases. And because it's enclosed on three sides, it's only got one way to go, which is to press backwards against that very same thoracolumbar fascia, right? So all of this to me rings exactly like descriptions in the Tai Chi literature and in some of the literature of India about the Qi transiting, the Qi accumulates at the Dantian and then overflows to the tailbone, shoots up the spine to the top of the head. So I'm thinking, this sounds like it's really a mechanism of fascial support. And when I sit, I find that that kind of image, that visualization of what's going on in the stretch of ligaments and the activity of the body is pretty useful to me. It keeps the stress out of my knees. I'm able to sit now more with the left side, the left leg up, even if I'm only sitting 25. I can sit that way and not wreck my knees. I can still walk the next day for a while there, what I was doing was not good on the left knee, and I didn't sit on the left with the left side up as much. But now I think it's going better. So yeah, no, I don't have a lineage of body work like Rolfing or Feldenkrais or anything, or even Alexander's technique's a really interesting one.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think, there's stuff out there that matches up pretty well with, especially the literature of Tai Chi, or at least that classic literature that's reported by Cheng Man-Ching in his 13 chapters. It's a pretty good match, and it's helpful to me. But I don't know. I mean, most people never have to think about any of this stuff, and it's anathema to most people. So I apologize to your listeners.
Don't have to, and anathema. I would just say it never occurred to them, I feel like, when I read your stuff, I feel like, well, I'm just taking baby steps. I come from a very simple system that focuses on the hara. Incidentally, a lot of people don't realize that because, like Suzuki wouldn't say it that much, but it was central. I mean, he'd say it now and then, but a lot of times he'd say follow your breath or sit or something. One thing I've found interesting, if you look at Buddha's, and you probably know more about this than I do, because I've just sort of glanced at it and read over it. But Buddha's original teaching on meditation, there's a number of different, some different versions, but one of them is just now I'm taking a short breath. Now I'm taking a long. Now I'm just breathing a long breath, and then you'll see the Vipassana. A lot of it is the early Vipassana is noting, maybe more like could be in your system, noting all sorts of movements of the body, feelings in the body, thoughts, impulses, and stuff. But but then there's the type that focuses on the breath going in and out of the nose. But every Theravada teacher, every Vipassana teacher I have been with here, they do what they call the Mahasa method, which is just like Zazen, lower abdomen. So it's totally compatible with what I heard. And if they were doing something else, I wouldn't pay any attention to it. I'd still just do the hara.
Right. And it's an interesting thing that Gautama does not go into any physical detail.
No.
Really, other than to say, sit down cross-legged, holding the body erect. And you're right, that instruction about the long and short, that's the second of the 16 elements in the mindfulness that he said was his own way of living. But, Ru Jing contradicted him. Dogen, I think, reported that Ru Jing said something like, the breath arrives at and enters the Tantien, the inhalation arrives at and enters the Tantien from nowhere, and therefore there's no longer short. The breath exits the Tantien to nowhere, and therefore there's no longer short of the exhalation.
Well, I wouldn't say that's a contradiction. That's just looking at it from a different point of view.
That's right. You're right. But it's interesting that he was aware of that instruction.
That's more from an emptiness, or that's from a higher level. To me, when Buddha's teaching there is very simple and fundamental. Also, another thing, like I knew some people, like they'd just gotten into Zen and they were familiar with more like traditional Buddhist stuff. They'd say,
we have to sit full lotus with the left foot on top of the thigh. Only Buddha sits with the right foot on top of the thigh. Well, I never paid attention to that because I thought, I wanted to do both ways. One thing, it was like giving a vacation to the other way a little bit,
Well, my judo teacher when I was in high school insisted that his students learn the throws left side and right side. And the Japanese judoka were known for executing their winning techniques on the left side.
Oh, really?
And the Europeans did their techniques on the right side, and in many cases, their techniques consisted of a takedown, and they would win their matches on the mat, as opposed to the Japanese that would win standing.
Oh,
yeah, there's that, and yeah, in the Three Pillars of Zen, I think there's insistence that you got to sit with the left leg on top.
Yeah, one thing in a lot of civilized cultures is that they haven't paid attention to the what percent, 5% or something that are left-handed, and try to force them to do. My father was forced to write with his right hand, which was very hard. And I've just talked to somebody who's who was it? Oh yeah, they tied his left arm to the nuns in the school, tied his left arm to his body and told him the devil is left-handed and he had to write with his right hand. And then his mother heard that and went and talked to the priest and chewed him out, and the priest chewed the nuns out, and he could write left-handed after that. But I just wonder if there's that sort of problem. Like in Japan, they definitely had problems with that because everybody has to do the same, and it was like redhead. Japan has redheads. And they'd have to dye their hair black to be like the others. I don't think these days they have to. But how much? But as that left-handedness. Of course,
I think there's something to it. I think there's definitely. It may be easier to bring the body mind to a point and initiate that kind of automatic activity of the whole body with the left side. What would you say in dominance? I think they say that left-handers are more right brain dominant, and I think there's definitely a left and a right brain ism in Zazen. There's the particular, which are in spades, and then there's the perception of the whole, and maybe sitting left-handed is conducive to right hemisphere dominance or something like that. Totally guessing.
Wow. Yeah. I have a question here. Where were you born?
I was born in Wisconsin.
Oh.
But the family left there after 1 year.
Oh. Don't run into that lot. I just, the guy whose arm was tied is from Wisconsin. He's a neighbor of mine here.
Well, I did so enjoy hearing about your upbringing in Texas. That was kind of a surprise that your parents were so liberal.
Yeah. Open-minded. Very fortunate, that the New Thought Christianity is a tradition which sort of, I call the precursor to the New Age.
Uh-huh.
But all right, you came from there. What year were you born?
50.
1950?
Yeah, I'm younger than you by 6 years.
Ah, well, I'm 45.
Ah,
What month? What month?
in June.
Oh, hey, you got a birthday coming up. So you're younger than me by 5.5 months, something like that. Or almost 5.5. March, April,
Yeah.
May, June. Actually, 5 1/3 months. No, 5 1/3 years. All right. So, what's your way-seeking path story?
Ah, I was just unhappy with my mind when I was like 15. Really, though, I think I got my start when I was in 6th grade. I read Battle for the Mind by Sargent, which was his account of what's really going on, what was really going on with Korean brainwashing, North Korean brainwashing, and religious possession. He saw a commonality there. And essentially what he said was, it doesn't matter how strong your will is. There are techniques, and they were employed in North Korea, and they're employed in some religious settings, where you stress an individual out, put them under enough strain. Maybe they get a little sick. Maybe they haven't been eating right. And one day they wake up and their whole belief structure has changed to whatever it was that you suggested would relieve the stress for them. So in the case of North Korean brainwashing, they woke up believing in communism one day. And in the case of religious conversion, they wind up believing in whatever the tenets of the faith are. He said it's a fundamental underlying survival mechanism of the human brain. Has nothing to do with willpower. So I read that in 6th grade. I think I picked it up at Kepler's books in Menlo Park. And that was the start of things. So by the time I was in high school, I was very unhappy with my brain. And I went chasing, the various substances that were available in the Bay Area to try to alter my consciousness and find God. And that actually did not really change my relationship to my mind. I was still pretty unhappy with just the way I was, the way my thoughts ran. Anyway, a friend of mine took me down. A friend gave me 3 pillars of Zen, so I started trying to sit, and I could barely sit 5 minutes Taylor when I started out. And then by the time I was in college, I was a little better. A friend took me down to hear Coven speak because I was in Santa Cruz at that point. And he was so impressive to me. And he said some great things like, take your time with the lotus. So I never became a student of any teacher, but I did keep sitting all kinds of years. And in San Francisco one day in 75, I was sitting in my room, which was a little room under a staircase in the Panhandle, and sitting on a chair, and my body got up and walked to the door. Now, I didn't will my body to get up and walk to the door. What I was trying to do that day was just be aware of every breath in and every breath out. And suddenly my body got up and walked to the door. And from then on, I wanted to do that. I wanted to act from that place all the time in everything, but I couldn't, come and go. And so I learned that if I stood at the door and my body went through the door at work, then I would put that aside and I would do my work and not think about it. and assume I should be there. But, sometimes I would walk across town and meet people that I didn't know were there. It was a very powerful experience. And in the 80s, I went to hear Coben speak at the SFN Center. And at the close of the lecture, he said, sometimes Zazen gets up and walks around. So I knew what he was talking about, but it didn't make sitting in the lotus any easier for me, which surprised the hell out of me. It took me until the 80s before I started to study. I went to the UCSF library. That's where I learned about Farfan and Bartolink and Rakovetsky, Farfan, and LeMay. I ordered up a copy of the Pali Sermons from the Pali Text Society. Started reading those. And all the time I was trying to write to explain to myself and other people what the experience was that I'd had and what its significance should be in my life. So I think it turns out that Gautama would set up that experience every day when he would sit, and he could summon it up again. He would arrive at where the one point of attention placed by the movement of breath could move anywhere in the body. He would arrive at that point with the action of breath being automatic from that one point. And then he would take the sign of the concentration, which is the shape of the body, what the body was like at that moment. He would use that during the day as he needed to summon up, to recover one-pointedness of mind and automatic activity. But for the most part, he would go on with thought applied and sustained, but he would stick with one point. He had one point going on most of the time, especially in the rainy season. And that was his way of life, not the concentrations that would take him to the attainment associated with his enlightenment. He didn't do that every day. What he did every day was arrive at the movement of breath being automatic activity through a one-pointedness, through allowing the breath to place attention and through a presence of mind that allowed the placement of attention to shift involuntarily. So this is important to me. I mean, this tells me what is the role of that experience I had in 75 in my life. Why did it take me 50 years, to satisfy myself? I don't know.
Wow.
Can you hear the cat?
No.
She's purring.
No.
I'm petting the cat. She's keeping me calm here.
Well.
Yeah. Story of my life. There, you got the whole.
That's good. That's good. It's unique. You have a unique story. You have a unique practice, and you have a unique message. What's your if someone wants to follow you now, your blog is
zenmudra.com. So it's ZENMUDRA.com.
Yeah, zenmudra.com. And your Facebook is Zen Notes.
Zazen Notes, right.
Zazen.
And the blog is there. The blog is there on the website as well. Everything on the Facebook page is just a link to zenmudra.com/zazen-notes. That's the subdirectory. That's the blog.
Yeah.
But you can get to that. If you get to zenmudra.com, then you can click on the navigation for Zazen Notes. And really, I think my best set of words so far is right there in the current posts on the site. My past writings, what I think are the best of those past writings since 2005 when I've had the website, those are on zenmudra.com, and you can go from one to the next through the whole thing. The kinesthesiology is at the end. The actual 16 elements of Gautama's way of living, his mindfulness, are there in the appendix as well. So it's up there. And recently, I redid the whole website and had occasion to read all 216 posts, I think, since 2005 that I had up there. And some of them I thought, oh, that one's borderline, but I kept all of them. And it's amazing to me, but the place I'm writing from has been reasonably consistent. Yeah, it's up there if anybody's interested. My email is up there somewhere.
Yeah.
Folks can email me.
Zenmudra.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, David.
Yeah. Well, hey, Mark, it's been really good talking with you. This is, like I say, you have a unique practice there and a unique message.
It's nice to talk to you as well, David.
Yeah. And we will continue being in touch as long until the everything falls apart from. Oh, no, let me just ask you, what do you think about climate change?
Well, I think it's real, and there are a few catastrophes in our face right now. Who would imagine, so many years after Silent Spring, that really nothing has changed in terms of the chemicals in our environment. Now we have plastics in our environment. And now we have climate change, which may be the most immediate of all. I continue to feel like all I can do is try to be the change, as it were, and hope that what I have to do for myself can perhaps be useful to the broader community. We'll see. Facebook gives me the opportunity to boost my posts. So the link to my latest post there has something like 170 likes now and 11 shares. So I'm happy about that, that at least there are some eyes on my work, if I can call it that. They don't charge very much, and they show it to a lot of people. Somebody put a rotating can of spam in the comments. Sorry about that. But for the most part, people are pretty open. People take it in a variety of ways. I think some people just look at the picture on the post and the paragraph that I put to introduce it, and they like it at that and go on. But, there's something like, I don't know, forget how many people have clicked through now to the actual website, but it's probably more than 40. And I feel great about that. I'm happy that Facebook gives me that opportunity because I don't see that I'm going to publish anytime soon. Even though, what amazes me is how few people have really read the Pali sermons, especially people in Zen. They had more interest in what the original guy said, but it's almost like a code what the original guy said. You have to have the key to decipher it, and the keys are hidden in volume 1 of the numbered sayings, whereas the other part of the key is hidden in the gathered sayings in volume 5, something like that, So it took me a time, but it amazes me that people aren't delving into the history and delving into the medical science, The descriptions in Tai Chi and the descriptions in Kundalini Yoga, those have been out there. Nobody seems to be interested in pinning down exactly what is going on there. I don't know. Maybe it's because it's so hard to gather it up and make sense of it. It sure has been for me. But I keep thinking people will be more interested than they have been so far, but I keep hoping.
Yeah, I understand. What you're doing and what you put out will actually reach to the furthest reaches of the universe. So
there we go.
You're just looking at the wrong numbers.
There you go.
Yeah.
It'll land where it lands, and I just have to pray that that's the way it works.
Yeah.
Certainly, we have teachers who have given their lives on the basis of that belief.
Yeah.
And we bow to them.
Yeah. Well, okay, Mark. Very good. Very good.
Nice to talk to you, David.
Yeah, good to talk with you. And until we meet again.
Till we meet again, take care.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
So, thanks a lot, Mark. I appreciate that. Unique, man. Yeah. I was talking to him. I had my legs down a while. I was just thinking about this because he talks about posture so much. And, everywhere where I work, I can put my legs up or down. I had special chairs made. I sit on 3 different, sort of like couches, like settees. Katrinka calls them settees. Anyway, so I had my legs down for a while. I was talking to Mark. But afterwards, after a while, I had to put them up because sitting with my legs down too long, it bothers me. It's interesting, huh? Now I've thought about this more, since I recorded that. And that seems to me, reviewing my past to be when I'm working. I prefer that. I can sit at a table with a chair and work for a long time. I get up every once in a while. We should do that. Get up, move around for a couple of minutes at least. It's best every 30 minutes. That's too much. 45's good. Sometimes I get lost and I look, oh my God, it's been 2 hours. But working, I feel more comfortable with my legs up. But not working either way, well, still like my legs up. But, I go to a movie and very seldom, actually, about once every 2 years. Anyway, I'll sit in the chair. I was at the hospital the other day waiting my turn to see a doctor. And I sat in a chair for 2 hours and I slept a lot. I got up. I'd just wake up and I'd stand up because I didn't want to leave the chair and lose my place because it was right facing the door where the nurse comes out and calls your name. Incidentally, the reason it was so long is I'd made a mistake. It wouldn't have been, it would have been 15 minutes if I hadn't have done something wrong. But anyway, I just wanted to add that it's not as simple as I'm not comfortable with my legs down. No, I can be, sure. All right, enough of that. Anyway, thanks a lot, Mark. This has been a Cuke audio podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Cuke Podcast and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Dogette Bandita and dear lovely Katrinka, and we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.